There comes a point when texting her again is the worst mistake you can make. You think reaching out will fix things, but in reality, it only makes you look weak, desperate, and forgettable. Today, I'll tell you why never texting her again is the smartest, strongest, and most powerful move you can make. Step 1. Silence creates value. There is a moment in every man's life when he must decide whether his words and actions are creating attraction or destroying it. Too often, men make the mistake of believing that constant communication keeps them relevant in her mind. They think the more they text, the more they call, the more they remind her that they exist, the closer she will feel. But the truth is the opposite. Familiarity, when forced, breeds contempt. What is given too easily loses its worth, and nothing kills respect faster than a man who doesn't know when to step back. Silence, on the other hand, has a strange power. It creates value, it forces space, it makes her notice what she once took for granted. When you stop texting, something shifts. She starts to feel the absence that she never considered before. The energy that was once flowing toward her now becomes still. She no longer has your words to reassure her, your attention to fuel her, your validation to lean on. And in that silence, she is left alone with her own thoughts. She begins to question why you aren't reaching out. She begins to replay moments in her head. Suddenly, the one who was always there is no longer available, and that absence speaks louder than any text ever could. Most men don't realize how much value they drain from themselves by being too available. Think about it. A man who is always ready with a reply, always waiting for her message, always quick to respond, becomes predictable. And predictability kills excitement. It makes him ordinary in her eyes, someone she knows she can have whenever she wants. But when you step back, when you go silent, when you refuse to keep feeding her ego, you reintroduce the mystery. You remind her that your time, your attention, and your presence are not guaranteed. And that reminder is powerful. Silence does not mean weakness. It is not about avoiding conflict or pretending you don't care. It is about showing restraint, discipline, and self-respect. A man who can withhold his words shows he has control over his emotions. He is not led by fear or desperation. He is not dependent on her reaction to validate his worth. Instead, he knows his value, and he allows his absence to speak for him. And what does absence say? It says, I am not here to chase. I am not here to beg. I am not here to convince you of my place in your life. If you cannot see it, I will let you feel it. This is why silence is so effective. It leaves room for realization. A woman may enjoy the attention while it's there, but once it disappears, she is forced to reflect. She begins to notice the quiet. She starts to miss the energy. And eventually, she begins to compare the way you carried yourself to the way others do. No matter who comes next, no matter what she tries to replace you with, your silence becomes the reminder that you were different, that you were not desperate, that you had the strength to walk away. A man who understands the power of silence becomes unforgettable. He doesn't need to announce his worth. His absence defines it. He doesn't need to argue for respect. His silence commands it. And slowly, the same woman who once overlooked him starts to realize the cost of losing him. She may not say it out loud, she may not admit it right away, but in the quiet moments, regret begins to grow. All because he chose not to text again. All because he let silence create the value that words never could. Step 2, respect over desperation. One of the biggest mistakes men make in relationships is confusing persistence with value. They believe that if they just show more effort, send more messages, express more feelings, and stay available at all times, it will prove how much they care. But what actually happens is the opposite. Instead of earning her respect, they slowly lose it. Because what a woman respects is not the man who places her above everything else, but the man who places his dignity first. Respect will always be stronger than desperation, and when a man forgets this truth, he ends up chasing someone who only sees him as ordinary. Desperation is loud. It shows up in constant texting, in checking if she has read your message, in asking why she hasn't replied yet, in waiting online to see if she notices you. Desperation is when a man invests his entire emotional energy into someone who hasn't proven that she deserves it. And the more desperate he becomes, the more invisible he starts to feel. A woman may acknowledge his efforts, she may even enjoy the attention for a while, but deep inside she loses admiration for him, because admiration cannot coexist with desperation. A man who cannot control his need for validation is a man who loses his presence. Respect, on the other hand, is silent. Respect shows in the way a man can walk away when his boundaries are crossed. It shows when he refuses to beg for attention. It shows when he understands that his time, his energy, and his effort are valuable, and he will not give them away cheaply. When a man chooses respect over desperation, he creates a sense of balance. She knows he cares, but she also knows he has standards. She understands that his world does not revolve around her every move. And that understanding builds attraction in a way no words, no texts, no late-night confessions ever could. The man who chooses desperation always asks, "How can I make her stay?" But the man who chooses respect asks, "How do I want to be treated?" That single shift in perspective changes everything, because the man who respects himself is not afraid of losing her. He knows that losing someone who doesn't value him is not a loss. It is freedom. And that confidence, that self-assurance, is exactly what draws people toward him. A man who does not beg commands more attention than a man who constantly pleads for it. Women can feel desperation. It's an energy that bleeds through every text, every call, every attempt to impress. And when they sense it, they pull away, because no one wants to feel like they are someone else's lifeline. But when a man operates from respect, he changes the entire dynamic. Instead of chasing, he observes. Instead of forcing, he allows. Instead of proving his worth, he lives it. And in that difference, she feels the strength that makes him stand apart from the rest. Desperation weakens the bond because it is rooted in fear, the fear of being alone, the fear of being rejected, the fear of not being enough. Respect strengthens the bond because it is rooted in self-worth, in boundaries, in the quiet knowing that your value does not depend on her approval. When a man moves with respect, he no longer begs for a place in her life. He allows her to decide if she wants to stand beside him, and if she doesn't, he walks away with his head high. That is the difference between a man who loses everything by chasing and a man who gains everything by choosing dignity over desperation. Step 3, energy shift happens. Every connection carries an energy, an invisible current that passes between two people without them even realizing it. When you are constantly texting her, constantly reaching out, constantly giving, the flow of energy is one-sided. She becomes the receiver and you become the provider. At first, it may feel harmless because you believe you are expressing care, showing consistency, or proving loyalty. But over time, this imbalance drains your power. She feels secure in knowing that you will always be there, always available, always giving without limit. And when there is no balance in energy, attraction begins to fade because people only value what they feel they could lose. The moment you stop texting, that energy shifts. Suddenly, the certainty she felt about you disappears. The constant stream of attention, validation, and presence that she once expected is gone. Instead of leaning back and enjoying the comfort of your efforts, she is forced to feel the silence. The energy she once absorbed effortlessly now returns to you, and with that return, her own mind begins to change. She notices the quiet. She senses the shift. She realizes that the one who once chased her has chosen to withdraw. And this creates a new dynamic, one where she is no longer in control of how the connection flows. Energy is not just about words or actions. It is about how someone feels when you are no longer there. A man who keeps pouring endlessly into a woman who does not reciprocate is giving away the most powerful thing he has, his presence. But when he steps back, when he decides to no longer chase, the energy is redirected. Suddenly, she is the one who feels the lack, the one who senses the gap, the one who wonders where the constant flow went. This is the power of an energy shift. It reverses the roles without you having to say a single word. Many men fear silence because they believe it means losing her. They imagine that if they don't reach out, she will forget them, move on, or replace them. But the truth is, silence creates space for realization. The energy shift makes her confront the absence she never thought she would feel. She begins to question why you pulled back. She wonders if you lost interest, if you are seeing someone else, if you no longer care. That curiosity is the seed of attraction growing again, not because you pushed, but because you stopped. The energy she once took for granted now becomes something she longs to feel again. When a man learns to control where he directs his energy, he becomes powerful. He no longer wastes it on someone who only half invests. He no longer hands over his time, attention, and emotions as if they have no value. Instead, he chooses to hold them, to protect them, to let the other person earn them. That choice changes everything because women can feel when a man values himself. They notice when he no longer chases, when he no longer seeks approval, when his energy is not freely available to anyone who asks for it. And in that shift, she feels the difference between a man who is desperate to keep her and a man who is willing to let her go if she doesn't match his effort. This energy shift is not about playing games. It is about reclaiming balance. It is about no longer letting someone else dictate the pace of your emotions. It is about reminding both yourself and her that energy is not free. It must be mutual. It must be respected. It must be valued. And when you stop pouring endlessly into her world, she finally realizes what it means to feel your absence. And that realization carries more weight than any message you could ever send. Step 4, emotional clarity returns. When you are caught up in constantly texting her, checking your phone for her replies, and waiting for her validation, your mind becomes clouded. Every thought revolves around her, what she's doing, what she's thinking, whether she still cares, or if she has moved on. That obsession keeps you in a fog where emotions blur your judgment and blind you from seeing the truth of the situation. You start to ignore the signs that she may not be as invested as you are. You start to excuse her distance, overlook her lack of effort, and justify behavior that deep down you know does not align with respect. When your emotions are tied up in the cycle of chasing and waiting, you cannot see clearly. You confuse attachment for love, attention for interest, and mixed signals for hope. But the moment you stop texting, something begins to change inside of you. The silence you give her becomes the space you give yourself. Suddenly, your days are no longer dictated by her responses. You are not checking your phone every hour. You are not replaying conversations in your head. And slowly, your mind begins to clear. Emotional clarity returns in the absence of noise. You begin to notice the truth you had been avoiding all along, that if she truly cared, she would not need to be chased. If she valued you, she would match your effort. If she saw your worth, she would not risk losing you. This clarity can only come when you step back and let the emotions settle. Clarity is powerful because it strips away illusion. When you are in constant pursuit, you live in fantasy. You tell yourself stories to keep the hope alive, but hope built on one-sided effort is nothing but self-deception. When you withdraw and allow the silence to take over, you are forced to face reality. You can finally see her actions for what they are, not for what you wish them to be. The unanswered texts, the delayed replies, the lack of consistency, they all begin to speak louder than your desire for her. And with that realization, you start to detach. Not because you no longer care, but because you finally understand that your energy cannot be wasted on someone who does not reciprocate. This emotional clarity also helps you remember who you are without her. When you are lost in desperation, you forget your own identity. Your worth becomes tied to her presence in your life. But when you pull back, you reconnect with yourself. You begin to focus on your own growth, your own peace, your own direction. You remember the things that once made you confident, fulfilled, and strong. The more you invest back into yourself, the less power her absence has over you. And that shift is where true healing begins. Another important truth about clarity is that it changes the way you view the entire relationship. What once felt like love may now look like attachment. What once felt like effort may now look like begging. What once felt like closeness may now look like dependence. And once your eyes are open to this, you cannot go back to the blindness of before. Emotional clarity is irreversible, and it frees you from the grip of needing her approval. You start to recognize that the relationship was never meant to drain you, that love should never require you to sacrifice your dignity, and that your peace is worth more than her attention. When emotions run high, it is easy to believe that losing her will break you. But clarity reveals that what would truly break you is staying in a situation where you are not valued. And the only way to reach that level of understanding is by stepping back, going silent, and allowing space for your emotions to settle. In that quiet, you rediscover the truth, that you were never meant to beg for love, that your worth does not depend on her, and that by choosing yourself, you gain far more than you ever lost. Step 5, replacement isn't easy. When a man pulls back and chooses not to text her again, one of the first realizations that eventually strikes her is how difficult it is to replace the energy he once brought into her life. At first, she may distract herself. She may talk to others. She may even convince herself that someone new can fill the space you left behind. But as time passes, she begins to recognize that energy is not something easily duplicated. Every man may look similar on the surface, but the way you carried yourself, the way you made her feel, and the presence you held cannot be copied by someone else. Replacement isn't easy because it's not about finding another person. It's about finding that same rare combination of effort, presence, and uniqueness that you once gave without her realizing its true value. When she was used to your texts, your attention, your consistent presence, she believed it was ordinary. She assumed it was something she could always have. She may have thought, if not him, someone else will give me the same. But when that pattern breaks, when your silence becomes the new reality, she starts to test the waters with others only to discover that the connection doesn't feel the same. Maybe other men text her, but they don't carry the same depth. Maybe others show interest, but they don't make her feel as secure or as understood. The conversations may flow, but the energy feels flat, as if something is missing. That is when the truth begins to set in. What you brought to her life was not as replaceable as she once assumed. People often underestimate how rare genuine energy is. It's easy to find attention, it's easy to find interest, it's easy to find temporary excitement, but it is not easy to find someone who carries an energy that lingers, an energy that feels different, an energy that doesn't just enter the room but changes the atmosphere of it. When you stop giving that energy, she feels the void. She may not admit it, she may not show it, but internally she notices the difference between how she felt when you were present and how she feels without you. And once she experiences that comparison, no replacement fully satisfies her. This is why silence is powerful. It allows her to feel what life is like without you. If you kept texting, if you kept reaching out, she would never have the chance to notice the gap. She would never recognize how unique your presence was because she would still have it. But when you step away, when you stop feeding her ego and stop pouring into her world, she is forced to face the emptiness of not having you there. And in that emptiness, she discovers that not everyone can bring what you did. Replacement becomes difficult because she isn't just looking for another man. She is looking for the feeling she once got from you. Over time, the realization grows stronger. The more she interacts with others, the clearer it becomes that surface level attraction fades quickly. Shallow conversations leave her empty, and temporary attention cannot replace the stability, energy, and effort you once offered. Even if she denies it outwardly, deep down she knows the difference. She knows that what you carried wasn't ordinary, and the thought begins to linger that maybe she underestimated you. Replacement isn't easy because people are not interchangeable. And once a woman experiences a man whose energy sets him apart, every other connection feels like a shadow compared to the original. This is why your silence creates more impact than your words ever could. By not texting, by not chasing, by not trying to prove your worth, you let her face the truth on her own, that what you brought into her life is not something she can easily find again. And no matter how many distractions she seeks, no matter how many people she entertains, the absence of your energy remains a reminder that replacement is never as simple as she thought. Step 6, the power of regret. Regret is one of the most powerful emotions a person can experience, and when used wisely in the context of relationships, it can serve as a silent but undeniable teacher. Too often, men fail to recognize its strength because they are focused on immediate reactions, on texting back, on proving their worth through effort. They don't realize that the most effective way to influence someone's perception is not through words, but through absence. When you stop texting her, when you step back and refuse to chase, you plant the seed of regret without ever having to say a thing. The power of regret is subtle, but it works because it targets the one thing no one can fake: emotional realization. Regret emerges when someone begins to reflect on what they lost, what they overlooked, or what they took for granted. When a woman is accustomed to a man's attention, his presence, his energy, she often underestimates the weight of it. She assumes it will always be there. She assumes he will always be available. She assumes his efforts are limitless. But when that presence disappears, when the constant stream of validation and engagement is withdrawn, she is confronted with a gap she cannot easily ignore. That gap forces reflection, and reflection breeds regret. Suddenly, the attention she once dismissed feels precious. The words she once overlooked carry new meaning, and the man she took for granted becomes unforgettable. The power of regret lies in its ability to create self-awareness. She begins to realize that her choices have consequences, that her actions, or lack thereof, have impacted someone who valued her more than she imagined. Regret is an internal reckoning, and it is far stronger than external persuasion. No amount of texting, no long apology, no attempt to explain can recreate the effect of her realizing what she lost on her own. When you step back, you hand her the opportunity to connect the dots, to see the truth, and to feel the weight of her own decisions. And that is far more impactful than anything forced or performed. Many men misunderstand the concept of regret, thinking it is manipulative or vindictive, but it is neither. Regret is a natural consequence of absence. It is not about making her suffer. It is about allowing the reality of her choices to surface. When you stop chasing, you are not punishing her. You are respecting yourself. You are demonstrating that your time, energy, and attention are valuable, and that they will not be given freely to someone who does not recognize their worth. That demonstration is what triggers regret. It is the stark contrast between a man who is available for everything and a man who chooses dignity over desperation that makes her reflect. Regret is amplified when she attempts to replace you. She may try to find someone new to fill the space you left behind, but no replacement can match what she had. And as she notices that nothing feels the same, that others cannot replicate your energy, your presence, or your consistency, regret deepens. She realizes that she may have let go of something rare, something unique, something that cannot be returned easily. That realization does not always lead to reconciliation, but it does create a lasting impression. It teaches her the value of what she lost and leaves a mark on how she approaches future connections. In relationships, regret is not a weapon. It is a mirror. It reflects her choices back at her, allowing her to see the truth she may have ignored while you were present. When you understand that your silence and withdrawal are not weakness, but strategic clarity, you harness the power of regret in a way that reshapes the dynamic. By stepping back, you stop giving, you stop chasing, and you allow her the chance to recognize what she allowed to slip away. And in that recognition, the influence you hold grows stronger than any words ever could. Remember this. Your value is not measured by how much attention you give, how many texts you send, or how desperately you chase someone who doesn't match your energy. True strength comes from knowing when to step back, when to preserve your dignity, and when to let silence do the talking. Walking away isn't weakness. It is clarity. It is self-respect. It is power. When you stop chasing, you stop begging, and you start living on your own terms. You allow her to feel the weight of her choices, and you reclaim your own peace, confidence, and direction. Never forget, the right move is often the hardest to make, but it is also the one that shapes your future, commands respect, and ensures that no one ever diminishes your worth again. Stand strong. Walk away. Let your absence speak louder than any message ever could.